I have accepted that I live in multiple dimensions. It has become inescapable to me that the third dimension can no longer contain my consciousness. And why you need to understand this fact. As always, my suggestion is to question your reality and then change it. 5D is coming for Earth, and nothing can stop it. Hello, my friends. This is Mahadeva, the Thunder Wizard. Welcome back to the channel. So, where should I start with this? The goal of this video today is to first help those of you who have experienced multidimensionality and or are struggling to experience it. So this includes people who have had mind-boggling experiences as a result of the practices and the meditations that we do on this channel. But there are others of you who are frustrated. You're not having big enough experiences. And part of that reason has to do with the fact that you are multidimensional. So I know that sounds like I'm gaslighting you out of your experience, but we'll get into it. The more that you can acknowledge and accept and understand your multidimensional reality, the easier it will be to have larger and larger experiences. I'll make a generalized statement, which I think is generally true. Your ability to accept your grandiosity, the true, grandiose, divine, godlike, powerful nature of your soul, to the extent that you are willing to imagine that, explore that, and accept that, that is really what allows you to have powerful experiences. My conclusion about the third dimension, the frequency that keeps us in the third dimension is self-devaluation. Think about everything that you do. You get up in the morning, you go to work. Why do you go to work? You have to go to work because you have to make money. Why do you have to make money? Because society demands it of you. If you don't make money, you won't be able to eat. Not only that, but you have to then live with the stigma of making money, not making money, being successful, all of those things. And we haven't even gotten into attractiveness and, do people like you? All of that. Our entire third dimensional existence is completely centered around self-devaluation. By the way, that's ego. When you talk about ego isn't thinking that you're something special. People, New Agey and lots of religions who talk about, I have no ego, I have no self, I'm nobody. That is actually the epitome of ego. Ego is self-devaluation. Humility is actually accepting that you are God. God is humble. God is extremely humble. Because God isn't, not because God is like, oh, yeah, no, I have all this power, but you know what? It's not important to me. I'm just really into people, man. That's not why God is humble. God is humble because he's not attached to that power. It doesn't mean anything to him. He doesn't distinguish between the power to create reality and the power to, write your name. He doesn't distinguish. So he doesn't have any any false humility. Ego is really false humility. If you are truly humble, then you will be able to say with a straight face and without any emotion one way or another, without being attached to proving it or the need to feel embarrassed by it, you will be able to say, I am the most powerful being that exists. I created this universe. Now, what's for dinner? That is humility. Anything other than that is ego. So let's be clear about that. So, overcoming ego is what we're talking about here. And it's the opposite of what the third dimension tells you. The third dimension tells you you should feel guilty if you have ego. That's what the third dimension tells you. All right, so I'm getting lost in the weeds as I often do. So let's just go ahead and get into it. Again, I have continued to accept and am choosing to accept that I do in fact live in multiple dimensions. And that I'm choosing to flow with and accept the reality that the third dimension can no longer contain my consciousness, because to continue to even begin to mentally explore what I have learned, what I'm being told, what I have experienced, I have to begin expanding into and accepting what I've been told by light beings for the past 2.5 years and what I have experienced. If I don't accept it, I can't continue to understand it. All right, so let's just go ahead and get into the list here. So let me start here. Whoops. Where's my list? I thought this was my list. Oh, this is my list. All right, so what you realize when you become multidimensional. So let's talk about the exponential shift from any dimension to another dimension. One of the things that, let me give you the premise behind why I have to go through all of this. Sorry, so many thoughts in my head, they get stuck. So I've been really racking my brains trying to understand what it's like to be in higher dimensions. So my experiences, if I can simplify it, my experience is that I'm living in a video game. I'm living in a 3D virtual reality video game, and I am completely wrapped, all of my perception is in the goggles. And I've completely forgotten that I'm this much larger person outside of all that. And while I'm trapped in this video game, I think it is the entire complete reality. I think everything that exists is what is inside this video game. And my friends are not in the video game, and they know that I'm trapped in it. Now, they know that I chose to go into this video game, and they knew that I would become trapped in it. They knew that. I knew that before I did it. But now that I'm in it, that's the fact of the matter. Now, there's a fire alarm, and people need to get out of the building because the building is going to go up in flames. So my friends who aren't in the game are doing everything they possibly can to get my attention and to get me to awaken. The problem is, inside of that video game, the complexities of reality outside of the video game are so much more expansive that inside the video game reality, those things don't fit. So they can't just come and say to me, hey, take your video 3D glasses off, let's go. because that would mean I understood I was sitting there watching a video game through my headset. They know that they can't just simply tell me that, because my brain will reject it. My brain is completely synced to the rules of this video game, and the rules of this video game are to immerse you in it, and so it is designed to reject any stimuli that comes in to take you out of the hypnotic effect. So my friends know this because they've done it. They've been in the game before. They know what it's like. But there's a real issue here. Not only do I need to wake up and take off the 3D glasses and get the hell out of the burning building, but there's millions of other people who are also stuck in the game, in this building. And so they are simultaneously trying to wake everybody up. But again, the vast majority of people are going to disregard that. The program within the game is going to disregard any of that. So the chances of waking people up are very slim. There's only a few people that are likely to wake up. So my friends are trying to wake me up, and they're doing all kinds of things. Now, here's what ends up happening. One of the other problems with this game is that it's not impossible to get people's attention. You can get people's attention by giving them dreams, by showing them miraculous things that go beyond their understanding. You can connect with them telepathically. You can send them feelings and awarenesses and all of those kinds of things. But that's not enough. Sorry, that's bugging me. That's not enough. What happens is people will temporarily wake up, and they'll have an experience that they'll start to think, my God, this is an illusion. I'm trapped in an illusion. But the problem is it's very difficult to keep those experiences going for long periods of time. So they're just short, temporary experiences that you can give them. And then as soon as the experience is over, the mindset as well as the program jumps in there and erases. So people will talk themselves out of it. They'll say, oh, I just had a weird dream, or I just had this weird deja vu, or I had this experience, or I just got this intuition, or I dropped some acid, or I took ayahuasca or ate some mushrooms, and so I was just tripping out, man. I was deep in meditation, and I had whatever. It's not enough to completely wake them up, because the persistence of the built-in illusion is so strong, right? So I've come to accept that is what is happening to me. And as long as I try and make it fit into 3D, I end up in real trouble. I either end up talking myself out of it, which is what most people do, or I end up in a conflict that causes me physical, psychological, and emotional pain. It also affects my self-esteem, because, if I were to right now, walk into City Hall, and, if there was a City Hall meeting, and say, hey, I need very important information I need to tell you guys. So I am in continuous contact with higher dimensional beings and extraterrestrials, and if I start launching into that, the majority of people are, not only are they not going to believe me, they're going to tell me to get the hell off the stage, or worse yet, they're going to get me locked up. So there's a lot of, a lot of ego about that, because, we want to look good. We need to look good. This isn't, 1,000 years ago, where the shaman lived on the edge of the forest and people would say, yeah, that guy's a shaman. He's out there. he's touched in the head. The gods have touched him in the head. That's what they used to say about crazy people, that on the one hand, they've been touched in the head, stay away from them, but at the same time, they know stuff that we don't. But anyway, we're not supposed to. So you stayed away from the shaman, you stayed away from the wizard. But when you needed something spiritual, you'd go to them, of course. In any case, so back to the example that I'm trying to give. So I am choosing to accept more and more that this is my reality. And as I say that, I just got jolted. That's another thing that they do. So that has only come as a result of doing CE5, which is human initiated contact with extraterrestrials. That opened up, you know all about that. They've hooked me up on higher dimensions, and so they have a direct connection to me. So that's the other thing, they're communicating with me most every day, multiple times throughout the day. And sometimes I get direct messages, sometimes I just get energy jolts, sometimes I get both. It's very difficult to have that happen to you all the time and not start to believe it, because either that or there's something really wrong with me. I don't think that there's anything physically or psychologically or mentally wrong with me. So the only other possibility is that something real is going on. Something is really happening. It makes it a lot easier if I just accept it. So this is what I've been doing. I've shared with you recently what they originally told me, that I was, I might as well talk about it, talking about getting rid of ego here. So when the ETs first started telepathically communicating to me, this is still hard to talk about, but, they started talking about me being king of Earth, and that they were going to make me king of Earth. And, I have different understandings of what that means now. But the most challenging one, which interestingly enough, I have an easier time accepting, because I can accept that and I can perform that function without having to get human understanding or approval. Being king means that other people know that about you, and that's a hard thing to get my mind and my ego around. Unless I, start talking about, well, that'll be in 5D. In 5D, that's different. That makes it easier. But the thing that they told me that is even more insane but easier to accept is the idea of being Supreme Lord of this universe. Now, as long as I'm in the third dimension, that's just an impossible thing to accept. Just absolutely impossible, because it's clearly not the case in 3D. I try and go tell anybody what to do, they're going to lock me up, they're going to put a gun in my face, they're going to tell me to get the hell out of here. I obviously don't have that kind of power. So what does that mean? That, I now understand, means that when I am in interdimensional meditation, I have power to change this reality. I have power to use my intention and my focus and the tools that I've been given, the Huar mantra and the other stuff that I've told you, all that stuff, all the Maoshan stuff, the Huar technique of activating the pineal gland. That's what all that stuff is about. That's why I went into that and started doing that. So I have those abilities, and that doesn't bother me as much because I've experienced it. When I go out in those meditations, when you guys are with me and I do that, what I intend happens. And it happens in ways that I cannot deny and I cannot explain. And then I went, oh, that's what that means. Being Supreme Lord of this universe means I have the ability to completely change this universe on the fundamental atomic quantum level. And that's easier for me to accept. Why, I don't know, but it is. So I'm talking about this because I'm encouraging you to have your experiences, your very grandiose, extreme experiences in interdimensional meditation. And as I said, the one thing that's going to prevent you from that is your ego, which says, I'm just this tiny little, that's not, your inability to go beyond that will determine your ability to accept what I'm here to tell you is a higher dimensional state of being. And that's it. So if you can just look at it that way, it becomes much easier. This is a higher dimensional state of being. And what has been very helpful to me is really trying to get my mind around dimensions from a physics perspective. Again, if you're new to my channel, even if you're not, it bears repeating. Please forget everything you hear in the spiritual community when people talk about 5D and higher dimensions. When people talk, if somebody says to you, for instance, I got a comment on the channel where somebody claimed to be from the 26th dimension and that they're living in the 26th dimension now. And it's just, that's obvious, complete nonsense. Right now, in this moment, I am operating from the third dimension. While parts of me are connected to much higher dimensions, as I'm sitting here, I can feel it, I'm aware of it. But the reality is that there's still part of me that's here in the third dimension. If I were fully in fourth, fifth, or sixth dimension, I wouldn't be here. There would be nobody sitting in front of this computer. I wouldn't be able to sit over here and type. I wouldn't need to speak. So please forget the vast majority of everything that you're told. Most people, and it's not their fault because most people aren't into, quantum physics. My dad was a physicist, so I'm really into the idea of being able to explain this scientifically. It really helps me. It helps me stay sane. Again, so just get rid of all that. When people talk about 5D, 6D, all that, most of the time, they really have no idea what they're talking about. What they think they're talking about is they think they're talking about alternate timelines or alternate universes. That's different. So you can have infinite numbers of alternate universes in the third dimension. Infinite numbers of them. But it doesn't mean you're in the fourth dimension. So just because you shifted to another world, even if that other world has different laws of physics, it doesn't mean you're in a higher or a lower dimension necessarily. It could mean that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. It just means that you're in an alternate third dimensional timeline or an alternate third dimensional universe of which there are infinite probabilities. So I'm concerned about higher dimensions. So let's talk about that. So the shift from 2D to 3D, let's just go there. So for that, let's bring up our thing here. So, 1D, 0D is nothing, right? It's just a point. Even the point doesn't exist. 1D is a line. That's one dimension. You're going in one, you can only go in one direction. 2D is a square, and that means that you can go length and width. Those are the two dimensions that you can travel. We are in the third dimension. The third dimension is a box. As I've said earlier, scientists, or astronomers or whoever, tried to figure out the shape of the universe. We're going to talk about that. The shape of the universe they determined was infinite. So it was infinite in all directions, but it was flat. What does that mean? It means that, whether they realize it or not, that the universe is the third dimension. So all they've done is they've determined that the third dimension is infinite. That box right there, it's flat. right? So if you just take all of those dimensions, length, width, and height, and make them infinite, you have an infinite flat box. That is our universe. What that means is the universe that we experience, the universe that we can measure, is nothing more than the third dimension. Now, if you think about the infinity of our universe, it's overwhelming. But I'm here to tell you that that infinite three-dimensional universe is nothing. It is tiny. It is so small and so tiny. Because each time you go up a dimension, again, if you look at all the points there, the 0 dimension has 0 reference points. The 1 dimension has 1 reference point and 1 point. The 2-dimensional box the 1 dimension has 2 reference points, from point A to point B, and then the 2-dimensional has 4 points. Each one of those corners is a reference point. So you have 4 reference points in 2D. In 3D, you have 8 reference points, right? So what that means is each time you go from one dimension to another, it's not just that you're going up a tiny step. You're going up. In our case, we live in infinity. I mean, it's true, 2D would be infinite as well. There just would be no height to it. But 2-dimensional, length and width, infinite directions, that's completely possible, but there's no depth, there's no height to it. So it's tiny for us. It's a very tiny reality. I mean, you can't even have any thickness. So it's not like it's a flat plane with, thickness. One of the problems that people have when they think about the second dimension and what it would look like is they imagine a thin line. And the more I thought about it, even scientists do that, the more I thought about that is a third dimensional reality. It's just you're in there's not a lot of width there, but that's still 3 dimensions. That's still 3 dimensions. You get a thin sheet of paper, it's still 3 dimensions, it's very thin. 2 dimensions has 0 height. So you can't see anything. It would be impossible to see anything in the second dimension. So the third dimension is the lowest dimension where we can possibly interact and experience things. You can't go any lower than that and have an experience. You can't see. You might have an experience like an amoeba, but you wouldn't be able to see anything. You wouldn't be able to hear anything. There would be no, because like in 3D we have air, there's space for sound to flow in our ears. If you're in a second dimensional space, there would be 0 space. So there would be nothing for sound to move through even. So you can't see, you can't hear, really no consciousness is available there. Third dimension, however, is the lowest dimension. By the way, as I said that, I got hit with a jolt, so they're saying, yeah, you're right. So in the third dimension, that is the lowest possible dimension you can go and still have an experience. When you get to 4D, again, you can see the picture there. That's a meaningless picture to our brain. But what that means is that there's 16 reference points. So there's a whole other, set of directions. We've got forward, backward, left and right, up and down. We have those directions. 4D has a whole set of directions that are impossible, literally impossible to try and understand. So just to back it up again, even though it is true that we live in the third dimension, we only experience it in 2D. When I realized that, I realized that even in the third dimension, we don't experience what is here. So that means a being that's in the fourth or the fifth or higher has complete experience of the third dimension. We don't. And the way I know that is wherever you look, you are looking at a two-dimensional plane. Your eye, when light comes in through your eyeball and hits the back of your eyeball, it's a two-dimensional picture. Your brain takes that two-dimensional picture and is able to give you an awareness of the third dimensionality of it. It doesn't actually give you the experience of three dimensions. We'll explain that in a second. But it gives you the ability to infer. So as I'm sitting here, my eyes are looking in my, the living room of my house, and I can see that wall there coming out. Light is hitting that, creating a shadow. Oh, that wall bends around over there. So, but the truth is, what I'm looking at is no different than I'm looking at this two-dimensional screen in front of me. There's no difference. That's why people sit around and watch TV all day. They're looking at a two-dimensional screen, but they have the same experience as if they're watching it live. Their brain creates it. There's a slight difference. They can't touch it and feel it and smell it. But outside of that, visually, there's no difference. So, if I'm sitting here looking at my, my bottle of, my mushroom elixir, kombucha thing here. If I'm looking at it, like you can see it, you can see the title of it here, you can see the front of it, you can't see the back. You can see enough detail of the light here that your brain can tell you that it's round, and so your brain understands that, but you can't see all of this at once. You also can look at it and see that there's a top to it. Your brain will figure that out. Your brain will figure out there's a bottom to it. So you can infer the third dimensionality of my bottle here, but you can't experience all of it. Now, why is that important? Because I'm trying to give you, stick with me on this, I'm trying to give you an understanding of how vastly, hugely different and how vastly more powerful it is to live in a higher dimension. Because just from the fourth dimension, not only can you see this bottle from the top, from the bottom, from this side, from this side, from this side, from this side, you would see all of those aspects of it immediately. And you would be able to see what is inside of it. You would be able to see inside of the glass. You would know how thick the glass was and know what it was made of. And that's just one object. You would have that experience of everything. So think about that. So just take a moment and look around where you are. I'm sitting in a chair. There's a table here. There's 4 chairs. There's a door. There's a lamp. There's a room over there. There's a cabinet. Now, if I was seeing in third dimension, I would see every possible aspect of every single object in this room. From below, from above, from behind, from one side, the other side, and everything inside of it. And inside all of the things that are used to contain it. Try and get your mind around that for a second. Can't do it. It's impossible. You can imagine having X-ray vision, but even then you're getting X-ray vision from one side. You can't see what's on the other side or underneath or above or below unless you rise up above, right? So we only experience things from 2 dimensions. And that is evident in our interaction, our emotional and psychological interaction. When we are at a low state of psychological and spiritual evolution, how do people live their lives? They live it 2-dimensionally. They love you or they hate you. This is what children are. People who have severe mental illnesses like narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, they are incapable of emotionally having a gray zone. So more than likely, you are able to be in a relationship with somebody and you can love them even when in the moment they're bothering you. So you can be really angry at somebody, but that anger won't prevent you from loving them. Now, on a two-dimensional plane, you either love them or you hate them. Things are either good or they're bad. You're either awake or you're asleep. There's very little nuance. There's very little, anything in the middle. It's always one or the other. And this is the big problem with human beings. They don't get along because they can't have empathy. Empathy is a third-dimensional reality. I just got hit again with that. So being able to empathize. Now, what would give you the ability to empathize? If you could see inside, if you could feel, if you could get inside somebody and feel their feelings, feel their emotions, feel what it is that they're trying to accomplish, you would have empathy for them. That is a third-dimensional characteristic. So human beings have these things. Now, left to ourselves, if we're not, emotionally or spiritually evolved, then we don't. We either love you or we hate you. It's fight or flight. You either want to eat it, have sex with it, or run away from it. That's very animalistic. Lower brain thing. Everybody's got that. Your animal instincts, which is life operating on two dimensions. And again, we see everything two-dimensional. So to be in the third dimension and fully experience the third dimension would mean that you would have complete empathy. This is why, again, all of you have to drop your fear-based nonsense. If you believe that there are higher dimensional beings, false beings of light who are trying to trap you into whatever, your assumption is that they're operating from a two-dimensional emotional state. Because in order to want to violate somebody's boundaries, in order to want to feed off of somebody else, you must be coming from a two-dimensional mindset. Because if you can harm somebody and you don't feel that pain, it means you're in a two-dimensional state. It's me or it's you. The third dimension is it's us, it's we. And so any being in the fourth dimension or above is immediately going to have empathy. Just by the nature of the physics of it. Because they will experience you from the third dimension. You don't know that because you experience life from a two-dimensional understanding. Every human does. We have to try to understand. We have to try and guess what somebody's motives are. I have another channel having to do with recovery from narcissistic abuse. And one of the main questions people ask me is, can you tell me why they did this to me? Well, in the fourth dimension, you would know exactly why somebody did anything. You would not only know it, you would feel it. So right there, the moment that you went to try and do something harmful to somebody, you would immediately feel in your own emotions and in your own body, you would immediately feel the pain that you would cause them. And that would be so painful for you, you would stop. Now, it wouldn't even get there because you would already have an empathic connection with them. I just got hit again. So they're telling me that's what it's like. So I hope you can see just from the third dimension to the fourth dimension, the enormously huge jump. It is a completely different reality, and a being from the fourth dimension, simply because they can actually operate from all three dimensions would make them a god to us. They would be able to see within you, so they would be able to see everything inside of your body. Not only that, without breaking your skin. Like for instance, now if you go to a doctor in the third dimension and another 3D, physical 3D doctor has to get in there to get to, because we can't, because we see in two dimensions, we can't see past the skin. We can't. So in order to get to the organs, and not only can we not see them, we can't touch them because the skin is a barrier we can't penetrate. So in order to get to it, we have to slice you open and cut you open, and then we can get to the heart or the liver or whatever it is. A fourth dimensional being wouldn't have to do that. A fourth dimensional being, because there are these other dimensions we can't see, they would be able to literally stick their hand into your body and do whatever. They wouldn't have to stick their hand in your body because they are fourth dimensional beings. They could, with their intent would go in there. So the other thing that fourth dimensional beings have is the ability to communicate with you telepathically, simply because they can perceive all three dimensions. Again, you're looking at, if you could look at a two-dimensional world with two-dimensional beings, you'd see this two-dimensional being. Let's say he was a circle. You'd be able to stick your finger inside of that circle, and that being wouldn't see anything. They would feel within them some energy, something was happening to them. So these, when higher dimensional beings come to me, they will oftentimes ask, do you mind if I put energy in you? Do you mind if I touch you? And it's not like I feel a physical hand on my body. I feel energy go into certain places. So here's the other thing, a fourth dimensional being. We're just talking about the fourth dimension. We haven't even started talking about higher dimensions. In the fourth dimension, a being would be able to see, to physically see, because again, your eyes are two-dimensional. So you can only see in two dimensions. The light hits the back of your eye and creates a two-dimensional screen. Your brain turns that into a TV screen in your brain, and you see it just like you do when you watch television. That's why you watch television, a two-dimensional screen. It looks just like 3D to you. It's no different. It's because your eye is a two-dimensional screen. So this we can't comprehend. You can try. But the eyes of a fourth dimensional being are third dimensional. So it means that light hits them from this side, this side, this side, this side, and this side, all at once. Not just one thing, but every single thing. Now, if I try really hard, I can try and come up with a mental picture of all the things here. I can try and come up with it, but the truth is I never will. It will only be a very vague approximation. Fourth dimensional being would be able to see all that and be able to experience it, go in and out of that without affecting it. Right? Because it's a third dimensional object and they're a fourth dimensional being. So that means everything that we can't experience. I can't experience your emotions, not in my third dimensional self, maybe my intuition, but that opens up a whole other box, which is that our imagination. People want to know, why is your imagination so important? Because your imagination is not a third dimensional thing. Consciousness is not third dimensional. Your spirit is not third dimensional. So when you're able to feel somebody's emotions, it means you're tapping into something from a higher dimension. When you're able to communicate telepathically, it means you're operating from a higher dimension. By definition, we're just talking science now. We're just talking physics. So that means, again, mathematicians and quantum physicists really only talk about spatial. They talk about dimensions from a spatial reference point. They never talk about it emotionally. They never talk about telepathic communication. But if you're a scientist and you're listening to me, you know just by thinking about it, you go, oh yeah, that's obvious. They would be able to feel all of our emotions. They would be able to hear all of our thoughts. And they would be able to communicate telepathically. Because in the third dimension, you can see what is inside any object. You can go inside and experience any object. So even the intention of communicating, by definition, would create a telepathic interaction. Got it? All right. So, take in your own time, think about that. Think about all of the power that just a fourth dimensional being would have. Now, here's what I find interesting. Three-dimensional beings only experience reality in 2 dimensions. 4-dimensional beings only experience reality from 3 dimensions. And so now we go from the 4th dimension to the 5th dimension. So the 4th dimension has 16 spatial reference points, which again doesn't mean anything except that it's not just double the 3rd dimension. It is a billion times. So much more unbelievably powerful. So a 5th dimensional being would be able to experience all of the 4th dimensions, and their eyeball would be a 4th dimensional eyeball. They would see everything in 4 dimensions. They would experience everything in 4 dimensions. I can't even, the 4th dimension already goes beyond everything I can understand. So I can't even give you examples. Other than in 5D, you can, and I only know this because, mathematicians have figured this out. In the 5th dimension, you would be able to have as many different identities as you wanted. You could be a doctor, you could be, you could have as many different lives, complete lives, as you wanted. And you could go anywhere you wanted in time. You could live in any time and you could be a billion people doing a billion things in a billion different times. Except you still have one reference point in terms of, the Big Bang. You can't have multiple universes. You can only function within this one universe. But within this one universe, you can be in as many alternate timelines and alternate realities as you want. Right? That much I know. In 6D, as I said, you can, in 5D, you can't talk to your other selves. But you can, you'll have all those experiences. But in the 6th dimension, you can sit down and talk with all of your other selves. That much I know. But you would experience everything from 5D. Anyway, those are just interesting points. So now, to get rid of that, all I can do is, now that I realize that 3-dimensional beings like myself only experience things from 2 dimensions, when I start to try and expand my mind to experience things from 3 dimensions, and I can't do that, but when I start to go there, I become aware very quickly the tremendous power that a 4th dimensional being would have. The power that they would have would be far beyond anything we can imagine. They would be God, without a doubt. This is again why, if you think about the biblical God, he's as 2-dimensional as they come. You either love him or you hate him. He has to throw you in hell if you're not perfect. A whole idea of being saved from sin and all that, those are completely 2-dimensional subjects. So, when you're worshiping the Jehovah, the Abrahamic God, you are worshiping a 2-dimensional being. You're worshiping the ego. That's just the definition of 2 dimensions. 3rd dimensions is, again, in the 3rd dimension, when we get into spirituality, which again can't be proven. Why? Because it's not a 2-dimensional concept. Everything that science is proving that they go and prove in a lab, they're only proving two-dimensional concepts. So that's why they can't prove anything else. That's why they can't prove whether God exists or whether there's life after death. Because in two dimensions, you're either alive or you're dead. There's no middle ground. And that's what we perceive. We only perceive you're alive or you're dead. That's it. In the third dimension, there's a third aspect, which is we see in religion. What do we have in religion? God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Ghost. 3. You have mind, body, spirit. You have Odin, Vili, and Ve. There's always these 3 aspects. Heaven, earth, and man in the Taoist understanding. Shiva, Brahma, Vishnu. So when you go beyond 2 dimensions and you start to live in the third dimension, then you start dealing with trinities. But again, it's a big mystery. You can experience it. You can feel it. You can't see it. You can't touch it. You can only experience it on a higher dimensional level. This is what intuition is. This is why people are able to, have psychic experiences. This is your imagination. This is where artists live. This is why artists can create things that you can feel. Whether it be painting or music, these are higher dimensional things that we're able to tap into. So this proves that we're higher dimensional beings. And this also shows us why, in our current state, why we are so incredibly, barbarous and life is so destructive, is because we live in a society that is forcing us to live in 2 dimensions. That's, the introduction of Christianity reduced polytheism into 2 dimensions. Heaven and hell, God and the devil, sin and righteousness, forgiveness or damnation. Those are 2-dimensional concepts. Polytheism, many gods. So, anyway. So I'm getting really, where was I? I'm getting really lost in the first one here. Where am I? So the exponential shift from 2D, 3D, 4D, 5D, 6D. So you will experience your godlike powers in higher dimensions. You will. It's not a question of if. You will. Simply by being able to live in all 3 dimensions. Just being able to do that will make you a god. So this is backing up my feeling that what we call 5D, the ascension, the new earth, is still going to be technically in the third dimension, but it's going to be a higher vibration where we'll be able to actually experience. If we were just to be able to experience all of the third dimensions, we would be gods. Just if we were able to do that, we would be gods. So you will experience your godlike powers in higher dimensions. Death to the third dimension means acceptance of God's powers within you. Why is it blasphemous to call yourself God? Because once you do that, you can't be controlled. The powers that be can't control you. And religion has been, the religion now is the narrative, the woke narrative. That's the religion of the day. But, the religion before that has always been Abrahamic, dualistic religion, which always serves the state, always. So death to the third dimension means acceptance of your godlike powers. So if you want to just experience the third dimension, opening yourself up to the fact that you are God will get you just in the third dimension. Once you accept your higher dimensional self, there is no going back. This is my experience. I picked this photo because, the guy looks like he's kind of in a haze. He's got that sort of like that Odin look on his face. He looks a little bit like me. Maybe I'll look like that in 10 years. But, the halo around him and the look on his eyes, he's not really 100% here. He's looking through everything. And when I accept what I'm being told, when I accept that the light beings tell me when I go into interdimensional meditation that I literally am changing the entire world, when I accept that, I die to my, more and more of my two-dimensional ego self. I die to that more and more. And so I'm encouraging you to do that as well, to allow yourself to have that. Allow yourself to have that experience. Once you accept your higher dimensional self, there is no going back. So the more that I go to this state, the less and less I'm able to live in the third dimension. I mean, I'm physically here. I guess I should say in the second dimension. I'm physically here in the third dimension, but if to be truly in the third dimension means that you're tapping into your four-dimensional powers. Again, a fourth dimensional being completely experiences all three dimensions. A fourth dimensional being does not experience four dimensions. If they were able to fully experience all four dimensions, by definition, they would be a fifth dimensional being. Right? This is something that blew my mind when I thought about it and realized it. That's why 2D people can't see. They're one-dimensional beings in a two-dimensional universe. And third-dimensional beings are experiencing two dimensions until they tap in. This is the difference between animals and people. Animals are 100% two-dimensional, almost 100% two-dimensional. And the more, this is the other interesting thing, the more interaction animals have with people, the more they start to move into third dimensional understandings. They have deeper, emotional expressions with themselves and with you. They're literally coming up into a higher three-dimensional experience. So if we can just get to fully experiencing the third dimension, we will be psychic. We will be able to go travel in time. This is just in the third dimension. We will be able to be telepathic. We will have higher energy. We will be able to send energy back and forth. We will be able to operate on people without cutting them open. We'll be able to see into people without cutting them open. You'll be able to telepathically communicate with other people simply if you completely expand into the third dimension without even going to 4D. And anyway, so this is where I've been going. And again, I have to keep telling you this. Every time light beings tell me something, it always ends up being true, especially when I don't believe it. And they've come to me numerous times and said, we're going to turn you into a multidimensional being. And they did this just recently. They showed up and they said, we're going to come later tonight and we're going to give you some power and it's going to be uncomfortable. And what was uncomfortable about it wasn't the physical discomfort. It was that my mind was expanding into all of this awareness and I was learning how to comfortably accept my godlike powers. The idea of being king of earth doesn't seem like a big deal to me anymore. And being able to be supreme lord of this universe. Now I know when I look at the third dimensional box, how small that universe is. That's nothing. Being lord of this one universe in this third dimension is absolutely minute compared to being just a normal creature in the fourth dimension. I'm a third dimensional, human. So to get to the place where I'm the supreme lord of this third dimension, which again was something that was given to me, I did something that they liked. My assumption is that because I didn't know any better, and I went off and decided to go travel to the sun and bring you guys with me and send energy from the sun, I obviously was not doing that from any ego. I was just doing it from a desire an honest desire to give to others. And I think that's what caught their attention. I think that I would think of it and then have the balls to go do it without having any ego about it. I think that's what caught their attention. And they decided, let's give him the role of Supreme Lord of this universe. So again, I can say that without, one-upping you, because there's no shortage of things you can be. And I'm not limiting you to the third dimension. Even if you go just a tiny bit into 4D, you will be so much more power than the Supreme Lord of this particular third dimension. So I want you to get to that place, because if you allow yourself in interdimensional meditation to communicate with these light beings, if you have the ability to expand into it, they will tell you things that will be beyond your comprehension, beyond your ego to handle. And those of us that do that will just that, the acceptance of that, will shift your frequency. And that's all that the shift is. Again, I've experienced beings. I've experienced Sasquatch. Sasquatch is a multi-dimensional being. And so I have experienced it. I know that can happen. I communicate with beings from higher dimensions all the time. So I know that exists if I allow myself to remember. So just us shifting up to a higher frequency of 3D, where we're closer to the understanding of truly the third dimension, where we see everything from 3 dimensions, where we feel. We don't have to try and have empathy. We immediately feel other people's emotions. We immediately are able to communicate telepathically. We immediately have empathy. We have love for everybody, because to do anything that would be selfish or harmful, we would immediately feel it. If we are truly 3-dimensional, we would immediately feel it. So, I'm starting to babble, so we'll leave it there. So thanks, my friends, for, if I didn't bore the crap out of you and you stuck with me, thank you for staying with this. So keep that in mind when we do interdimensional meditations. Let yourself believe, because we're doing it. When we go out there, we are gods. We are beyond. I don't even know what possible dimension we're in. By the way, if you're one of those people like me where you can't visually see what's going on, of course you can't. Your eyes can only see in 2 dimensions. And when you're in 4D, 5D, 6D, because just to talk to the beings that are councils, the councils are in like 9D. So when you talk to the Council of 9, for example, you're in the 9th dimension. And if you're able to see anything, my hat's off to you. I can't see anything. I get, just little bits and pieces of images, and I go, a light being there, something like that. But of course you can't, but I can feel it. I can feel it and I can sense it. And that means that those parts of me that can feel it and sense it, interpret it, understand it, are higher dimensional aspects of myself. But this brain, these eyes, your brain will only be able to put things together in 2 dimensions, and then you'll be able to see it. Unless you're one of those people that can go into 4D and see things in 4D. And if you did, you wouldn't be able to come back and explain it in ways that we could understand. So, anyway, again, I'm going off into the weeds, so I'm going to shut up now. Thank you, my friends. I really appreciate you spending the time listening to me. And, this is Thursday, so day after tomorrow, Saturday, we've got another interdimensional meditation. And let's continue to change this world and shift ourselves. Please take very good care of yourselves. Now you can understand a little bit more deeply that you are, in fact, the being that has created this universe, and this universe is completely here for your own personal enjoyment. So with that, my friends, I love you. I wish you all the best. Please be very good to yourselves, and I will see you all very soon.